Chapter 1. Every spring, folk meandered through wilderness to find themselves. There was always something to be found, something new to discover, something which could not be described. Nicola's brother could never describe it, however often he wandered in and out of wilderness, and he always returned home a few days older, dirtier. Nicola was always prepared that his brother would someday find himself and return someone anew. Luca was after Luca, after all, until one day Nicola was invited to camp with him one lush summer. The lace flowers were blooming along the side of a dirt road. Hikers shared the road with shepherds, sheep, cattle, wagons, puddles, mud, gnats, grasshoppers. Cornstalks grew in formation in the fields. The sound of crickets hovered, sparkling. A trail split from the road and lay beneath the fixed sign for Pearl Lakes Park between two wooden columns. From there, trees covered the land and shaded the road. Breezes drifted in the shade and along the trail up to the park ranger's office. Morning sunlight hit the cedar tiles of the building. Sunbeams split through the forest. Luca exited the office and fit an unfolded map in the spread of his arms. Young Nicola trailed him. He wondered how Luca could so easily read the swath of terrain. The way that his brother stood, tall, certain, a master of adventure. His poise was awesome. With all the time Luca spent away from home, no wonder he seemed to have an air of wisdom, an aura of rugged. Camping did that. But 3 hours. "Is it really going to take 3 hours?" said Nicola. 3 hours just to get there. 3 hours. "We can do it," said Luca. He handed Nicola the map. Nicola stretched his arms wide to keep the map open. "Look at all these lakes. They can't all be that different, right? It's just water." "They say they are." Nicola pulled down the top of the map. Luca was hurrying up the trail that went into the trees. Folk were coming up from the road and crowding the trail and park ranger's office. Nicola rushed between hikers. The map crinkled and wrinkled. "I still feel like we forgot something," said Nicola. "We probably did." "I hope not. Look at everyone else's packs." Nicola bunched the map. He watched folk amble with their bulging packs. He wondered why it seemed that packs weren't enough to hold things. Rolls of bedding were stacked and tied at the top of backpacks. Pots and pans hung from straps at the bottom. Dangled tin mugs clattered where laces tied down pack flaps. Bundles of cloth were saddle-fastened. Was it so necessary to pack so much? Maybe everyone else was simply well prepared. "We definitely forgot something," said Nicola. "We'll find out. Plus, that's how you learn." Nicola felt he had much to learn about camping. He knew that the first thing to find was their campsite. So far, there was a lot of hiking. At least there was shade. The sun was so hot that it was heavy. The shaded trail lay under them. It curved out into the sunlight along the edge of a lake. Luca paused and gazed upon the lake. Nicola stared agape. It was the first of many gorgeous lakes, if he correctly understood Luca, the park ranger, and the map. The water was choppy. The edges sheened pearl. Warm wind pushed broken ripples along the jagged surface. Over the rough trail, Luca beckoned Nicola along. They passed the lake and strolled into the next shade of trees. The canopy waved in the wind. Sunlight dappled around the shadows of leaves on the trail. Nicola remarked that not a soul was ahead of them. He understood then why Luca had insisted they go early. The views couldn't be that different with people around, though, could it? Probably. Luca almost always knew what he was talking about. He even seemed to know the trail by heart. The trail curved around the edge of another lake. The distant other side was softened behind the haze. Grasses grew in the lake. Bright inflorescence bobbed above the grasses in the wind. Nicola squinted at the sight. He marveled at the scene and felt glad that Luca had paused as well. He was eager to hurry along the trails so they could pause at all the lakes. The rest must be just as powerful. Yes, Luca knew what he was doing. He picked the best park. Nicola stretched his arms out wide. The map crinkled open, and it bent with a scoop of wind. Holding tight, Nicola read the name of each lake along their hike. He was sure that the farther they hiked, the more grand the lakes would be. The colors were already amazing. What trick of the sun! All the lakes along their way glittered. "And this one must be Feral Main Lake," said Nicola. The water was smooth. Shallow waves slapped the banks. Sparrow wings flapped overhead. Crickets hushed. Luca put an arm around Nicola's shoulders. "Listen." Nicola stood still. He nary budged an iris. He felt he stood very, very still. So why could he not hear anything? Was there a better way to listen? How come Luca could hear something? Luca looked at him. Nicola searched his brother's eyes, and they shared smiles. Luca turned his gaze to the lake and dragged in a deep breath. He let it out long and slow. "Deep breath," said Luca. "Come on, your turn." Nicola inhaled. "Feel that?" said Luca. "How salty it is, fresh and clean and pure." Nicola breathed deeply and listened. He waited for anything. He was curious about the salt and the fresh and the clean and the pure. What was Luca talking about? What salt? What was there to listen to? The silence. "This is the best," said Luca. Nicola chewed his bottom lip. He felt certain he was breathing wrong. He stood on his toes and sniffed. Luca eyed him. "Makes you relaxed, and you can think about all the things that really matter. Can you smell it?" Nicola smelled air. "I think so." He frowned. If Luca smelled something that made him think about things that really mattered, why didn't it work for him too? And what did that mean for Luca? What was it that really mattered? Why couldn't he be made to think of things that mattered too? Just one more try. "You comin'?" Luca called, walking off. Nicola rushed 3 sniffs and sprinted after him. The scent of peach was in the air. The aroma was light in the shade of the trail and humid and sticky under the sun by another large lake. All around, peach trees dangled fat fruits from crust-barked branches over the water. Nicola tilted his head. He compared the lakes he'd seen. Why was this one so still? Was it even water? Luca pointed. "Oh, they look delicious, don't they?" "We can eat them?" "Yeah, we're allowed." Nicola's gaze roved the peaches and the water and the peaches. He thought he could taste juice in their meandering fragrance. Were they truly delicious? Since when could Luca pick out delicious fruit? This was a new side to Luca. Swollen peaches hung from dipped branch tips. A sparrow leapt from a cluster of peaches, and the branch bobbed and swayed. The bouncing peaches flashed silver off their downy skins. Nicola smiled. He mused that peaches were furry like a wild beast. Would a baby wolf be just as small when balled up, just barely fluffy? Hey, what would Luca think? "All right," said Luca, and he strolled up the trail. Nicola stumbled after him. They crossed a breeze, and Nicola tilted his head and took deep whiffs. The smell was juicy and peachy and wet and ripe. He mused that the scent was tugging at him, as if it didn't want him to go. Laughing, Nicola turned to gaze upon the lake once more before they entered the next wooded part of the trail. Beneath the stretch of a branch where peaches hung, the water rippled in full circles. The canopy came over their heads, and tree trunks drew over the view of the lake. Leaves rustled. Peach breezes split around trees. Nicola's gaze fell to his boots on the trail. He wondered what really mattered to Luca. Didn't everything matter? It must be part of the finding himself that Luca always talked about. Did everyone do that when they camped? "Nicola," said Luca. With his chin he pointed at a clearing down a path beside the long trail they followed. Exhausted, panting, Nicola read the painted sign on a short post. T-44! He rushed to the campsite and slumped on the ground. Luca laughed and set his pack beside a ring of stones. He rummaged and pulled out a tied cloth bundle. A few pinches untied the knots, and the corners of the cloth fell away to reveal monster marshmallows. Luca picked one up and tossed it and caught it. "Yes!" said Nicola. His eyes widened. He guessed that the marshmallow was as big as an apple. How roasted, how toasted would the first bite be? "After we set up camp?" said Luca.